A soft hush settles over the ancient world as we begin, a gentle drift through the corridors of time where whole civilizations once breathed, thrived, dreamed, and then, without warning, went quiet. Tonight, we move slowly, as though walking through a museum after closing, where echoes linger but footsteps do not. The story before us is not one of victory or conquest. It is the story of endings, of mysteries left behind like faint candle smoke in an abandoned chamber. Civilizations rise with brilliant certainty, building monuments, charting stars, crafting languages meant to last forever. And yet, again and again, history shows us that even the greatest societies can fall silent, their lights extinguished without a clear sign of why. Imagine the first sparks of human ingenuity shaping entire landscapes. Cities carved from stone, temples aligned with celestial patterns, networks of trade stretching across deserts, forests, and seas. These places were once filled with laughter, faith, ambition, and the daily rhythm of life. And yet all that remains now are crumbling walls, scattered artifacts, and questions whispered by wind through broken doorways. The contrast is striking. The solidity of stone against the fragility of the social threads that weave a civilization together. One can stand in the ruins of a once mighty city and feel both the weight of its history and the lightness of its disappearance. It is as if these societies simply exhaled and vanished. History tends to honor the grand narratives of empires, their victories, their rulers, their monuments that still pierce the sky. But this journey is different. Tonight, we explore the stories that history left unfinished, the civilizations whose ends remain uncertain, unresolved, suspended between knowledge and mystery. There is something soothing in this uncertainty, something almost poetic in the way time erases footprints, yet leaves behind enough clues for us to imagine what once was. We are drawn to these unanswered questions not for the thrill of solving them, but for the calm, comfort found in contemplating them. In a world filled with explanations and noise, the quiet puzzles of vanished civilizations offer a rare stillness. They remind us that not everything must be known, not every ending must be clear. The past holds its secrets gently, letting us approach only as close as we are meant to. Some societies disappeared because nature shifted beneath their feet. Some dissolved through slow internal change. Some may have faced crises so gradual that they hardly recognized collapse until life had already moved elsewhere. And others simply faded, leaving behind no trace strong enough for us to grasp. The known and the unknown sit side by side, forming a landscape of both clarity and shadow. Let us wander softly through that landscape. Picture a city once lit by thousands of torches, their glow rising into the night like a constellation resting on the earth. Then imagine that same city centuries later, its plazas overgrown, its stairways half-buried, its rooms filled only with dust and quiet. Nothing announces that the people left. No final message explains why. The disappearance is not dramatic or violent. It is a gentle retreat into silence. The earth reclaims what was once hers, and history moves on. There's a unique kind of beauty in examining these silent endings. Each collapsed civilization invites us to reflect on the delicate balance that sustains any society: climate, resources, unity, leadership, and the changing tides of belief. When even one strand loosens, the whole tapestry may begin to unravel. Yet these unravelings are rarely sudden. They unfold slowly, softly, like a lantern dimming as its oil runs thin. And in that gradual dimming, mystery grows. As we begin this gentle journey, we will drift across continents and centuries, visiting places where people once built extraordinary worlds from nothing. We will explore cities older than pyramids, cultures that mastered engineering long before recorded history, empires that governed vast territories, and island societies that carved stone giants to watch over them. Each one thrived, each one faded, and each one left behind more questions than answers. But we remain unhurried. This is not a search for solutions. is an exploration of possibilities. Why did some societies abandon their homes so peacefully? What subtle signals of strain might they have noticed but ignored? How much of their disappearance was choice, and how much was circumstance? The tone of our journey stays gentle, as though we are listening to stories told by the ruins themselves, stories that were never finished, spoken only in fragments and riddles. As the modern world races forward, the collapse of ancient civilizations reminds us of the cycles that underlie human history. Birth, growth, flourishing, decline, and renewal. All are natural, all are inevitable. These long-lost societies are not failures, but chapters in a vast human narrative that continues even now. Their quiet endings invite us to see our own time with humility and reflection. Tonight, we drift into these stories one by one, letting each civilization reveal its silence at its own pace. Our journey begins on a distant coast, where one of the world's oldest urban societies rose with astonishing sophistication before slipping away with barely a trace. As the winds of history shift, we follow them to the ancient valleys of Carol Soup, where the first clues of humanity's mysterious disappearances await. Along the arid coast of Peru, where the desert meets the ocean in a long, quiet breath, lies one of the world's oldest and most enigmatic civilizations, a society that flourished long before the rise of the Inca, before the Maya mapped the skies, even before the pyramids of Egypt reached for the sun. Here, in the valleys of the Carol Soup, time feels layered in gentle folds. Wind drifts over the ruins with the softness of a memory trying to return. This place was once alive with music, trade, ceremony, and a remarkable sense of community. Yet today it rests in calm, unbroken silence. It is a silence so deep that it feels purposeful, as though the land itself is protecting the secrets of a people who walked away without leaving behind a clue as to why. When archaeologists first uncovered Carol, they were astonished. The structures rising from the desert, pyramidal platforms, circular plazas, wide staircases, suggested an advanced urban society capable of large-scale planning and coordinated labor. And yet the site revealed something even more surprising. There were no weapons, no fortifications, no signs of violent conflict. In an ancient world often shaped by conquest and rivalry, Carol stood as a quiet anomaly. Its architectural sophistication emerged not from war or domination, but seemingly from cooperation, ritual, and shared purpose. This gentle nature makes its disappearance all the more mysterious, like a peaceful song cut short before the final note. Walking through the ruins today, one can almost imagine the pulse of life that once filled this desert valley. The plazas would have echoed with the sound of flutes and drums crafted from condor bones and seashells. Traders would have journeyed from far-off regions, carrying goods along the dry riverbeds. Families lived in carefully designed residential areas, working together to farm cotton and vegetables irrigated through ingenious canal systems. The people of Carol seemed to live in harmony with both the land and each other, leaving behind not the marks of conflict, but the fingerprints of creativity and calm. And yet, for all their achievements, the most striking clue about Carol is the emptiness left at the end of their story. The abandonment was not scattered or chaotic. It appears, instead, almost deliberate. Homes left tidy, plazas free of signs of struggle, structures intact. There is no evidence of invaders sweeping through, no mass graves, no burned layers. It's as if the entire population simply gathered their belongings and drifted away, leaving behind only the bones of their once thriving city. This gentle exit remains one of archaeology's quietest puzzles. Some theories suggest that climate change may have nudged this civilization toward decline. The desert that now lies still and quiet was once crossed by rivers fed by Andean rain. If those rains shifted north or south over decades, the river flow could have dwindled until the fields dried and the irrigation canals emptied. A society built on careful balance might have found itself slowly starving, not through sudden catastrophe, but through subtle, incremental strain. In such a scenario, the people of Carol may have simply migrated to more fertile lands, carrying their culture with them like seeds scattered into the wind. Another theory suggests that natural disasters may have played a role. The region is prone to seismic activity, and earthquakes could have damaged the ancient structures repeatedly. These quakes may have forced the community to rebuild again and again until the effort was no longer sustainable. Such destruction would not necessarily leave dramatic visual traces, but it might have weakened the social fabric, creating a quiet tipping point that eventually encouraged abandonment. Yet even these explanations feel incomplete, leaving intangible gaps, spaces where imagination drifts into the soft unknown. How did a society with such organizational intelligence leave so little record of its departure? Why is there no evidence of conflict or desperation? Did they relocate peacefully, blending into neighboring groups? Or did their culture dissipate gradually until its identity blurred and faded across generations? These questions linger like the last traces of smoke from a ceremonial fire, long extinguished. One of the most intriguing aspects of Carol is its connection to music and ritual. Archaeologists found beautifully crafted flutes and horns, instruments shaped with care and precision. Music likely played a significant role in their ceremonies, perhaps helping maintain social cohesion. Some researchers believe that these rituals may have been tied to astronomical events, agricultural cycles, or spiritual beliefs centered on the landscape itself. If environmental pressures worsened, the interruption of these sacred routines could have gently unraveled the structure of their society, not violently but quietly, like a tapestry losing its threads at the edges. As the desert reclaimed the city, sand slowly gathering in corners and covering stairways, Carol began its long transformation from a lively urban center to a ghostly archaeological wonder. The pyramids endure because they were built of stone and earth, their shapes softened by time, but still recognizable. The rest, the music, the voices, the daily rituals, melted into the air, leaving behind the elegant bones of a civilization whose heart has gone missing. Standing in Carol today, with the heat shimmering above the ruins and the distant mountains casting long shadows, one can feel both the presence and absence of the people who once lived here. The stone plazas seem to wait patiently for footsteps that will never return, and the pathways look as though they were cleared only yesterday. The contrast between the sophistication of the structures and the utter disappearance of the society invites a deep, almost meditative contemplation. How fragile, we realize, even the most brilliant human creations can be when faced with the slow turning of nature's wheel. The story of Carol Soup serves as a gentle reminder that not all collapses are dramatic. Some simply unfold gradually, through unnoticed shifts in climate or subtle changes in community life. There is no single moment of destruction, only a slow fading of presence until silence becomes permanent. This peaceful dissolution makes Carol one of history's quietest disappearances, yet also one of its most poetic. Its ruins whisper not of violence or downfall, but of a society that lived with remarkable harmony and left without chaos. As we leave the desert coast and the wind-swept pyramids behind, we follow history's faint trail north and east toward the vast plains and forests of Europe. There, another mysterious civilization once built enormous settlements, crafted exquisite pottery, and then chose a path far more dramatic than Carol's gentle fading, a path marked by fire, ritual, and the sudden disappearance of entire cities. And so, we drift toward the enigmatic world of the Cucutini, Tripilia, where mystery burns as brightly as the fires that consumed their homes. Across the rolling plains of Eastern Europe, long before the rise of the great classical civilizations, there existed a culture that built cities unlike anything else in its time. The Cucutini, Tripilia people, whose settlements stretched across what is now Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine, created massive proto-cities that sometimes housed tens of thousands of inhabitants. These were not fleeting villages, but organized urban spaces, with concentric streets, carefully planned housing, and central plazas where life's rhythms would have unfolded. Walking through the imagined streets, one can almost hear the laughter of children, the low hum of conversation, the rhythm of hands shaping clay for the vibrant pottery that the culture is still famous for. And yet, despite all this life and sophistication, these communities vanished mysteriously, their cities often found in ruins, burned, abandoned, and left for centuries to merge back with the earth. What makes the Cucutini Tripilia disappearance particularly haunting is the deliberate pattern of destruction left behind. Archaeologists have observed that these settlements were frequently burned, completely and systematically, only to be rebuilt repeatedly, sometimes in cycles spanning generations. Unlike invasions or wars where destruction comes chaotically, these fires seem intentional, ritualistic, and eerily controlled. The dwellings, often made from wood and clay, would be carefully torched, as though the act itself held meaning beyond simple obliteration. One cannot help but feel the tension between creation and destruction, life and silence, as if the people were dancing along a thin line between continuity and dissolution, leaving traces of both on the landscape. The pottery of the Cucutini Tripilia culture, delicate yet striking, speaks in quiet whispers of society deeply attuned to art, symbol, and perhaps spirituality. Swirling patterns and stylized figures cover each vessel, suggesting both aesthetic sophistication and ritual significance. Some scholars believe these intricate designs were part of ceremonies tied to fertility, harvest, or cosmic cycles. There is a rhythm to these artifacts that mirrors the cycles of construction, burning, and reconstruction that define their settlements. Each fire that consumed a city might have been part of a ritual renewal, a symbolic gesture intended to harmonize human life with the forces of nature or spirit. And yet, for all the meticulous attention to life and symbolism, the final outcome was silence. Entire communities disappearing without a clear trace, leaving modern observers to puzzle over the motives and meaning behind each flame. Some theories suggest that environmental changes played a subtle yet decisive role in these repeated burnings and eventual abandonment. Shifting climate patterns could have affected crop yields, forcing communities to adapt or relocate. A minor drought one year, followed by floodwaters the next, may have placed stress on the social and agricultural systems, nudging people toward ritualized destruction as a way of managing societal strain. But even in this context, the fires seem intentional, almost ceremonial, suggesting that the Cucutini Tripilia people were active participants in their own transitions, rather than passive victims of circumstance. The mystery lies in understanding how they perceive these acts. Were they acts of devotion, protest, renewal, or resignation? The answer remains elusive, lost to the whispering winds of centuries past. Walking among the reconstructed outlines of these ancient cities, one can sense the grandeur and the fragility existing side by side. Streets wide enough for bustling marketplaces now lie silent, covered by grass and soil. Foundations once lively with human footsteps are now empty, leaving only the shapes of homes and the faint imprint of human ambition. The contrast between the permanence of pattern and the impermanence of presence is striking. In these abandoned settlements, the orderly geometry of streets and buildings stands as a quiet monument to human organization, while the sudden emptiness evokes a profound meditation on mortality, time, and the ephemeral nature of society. Another aspect that deepens the mystery is the social complexity inferred from these settlements. The sheer scale of the Tripilia cities suggests advanced organization, coordinated labor, and a sophisticated system of governance, even if no written records remain. The very act of burning an entire city, then building anew, implies collective decision-making, shared belief systems, and perhaps a remarkable level of trust among the community. These were not haphazard flames of desperation, but controlled acts within an interconnected social fabric. And yet, over time, the cities ceased to re-emerge, leaving behind an enigmatic pattern of human ingenuity and disappearance that continues to captivate archaeologists and historians alike. The thought of a civilization capable of such planning, yet choosing or being forced into cycles of self-destruction, invites reflection on the delicate balance that sustains human communities. Societies rise on the strength of shared purpose, resources, and trust. When one thread frays, the whole tapestry can begin to loosen, sometimes subtly, sometimes catastrophically. The Cucutini Tripilia culture demonstrates that decline need not be abrupt or violent to be profound. Even the most organized, seemingly resilient societies are vulnerable to shifts in environment, belief, or internal cohesion. Their fate, quietly etched into the soil and pottery shards, reminds us that collapse can be as much an internal rhythm as an external shock. As the fires died down, leaving charred remnants that the earth slowly reclaimed, the Cucutini Tripilia cities faded into the landscape. Grass and trees grew over the foundations. Rivers shifted. Winds carried away ashes and stories alike. What remains now are fragments, pottery scattered across fields, subtle impressions of streets in the soil, and a haunting realization that these people, so advanced and deliberate in life, disappeared almost entirely, leaving the world to wonder what prompted their final exodus. It is a disappearance that balances between the known and the unknown, the visible and the invisible, creating a calm, contemplative space for the mind to wander in mystery. As we leave the smoldering echoes of Tripilia behind, we turn southward to another ancient culture that left a different kind of silence, a civilization that spoke through stone rather than fire. The Olmecs, guardians of colossal heads carved from basalt, present yet another enigma. A society whose remarkable artistry survives in permanence, even as the reasons for its decline remain veiled. From the ritual flames of Tripilia to the enduring stone faces of Olmec cities, the journey continues through the delicate interplay of human creation and the quiet pull of history's mysteries. In the dense, humid lowlands of what is now southern Mexico, a civilization emerged whose whispers have endured through time in the form of monumental stone and enigmatic artistry. The Olmecs, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, flourished around 1500 to 400 BCE, leaving behind a legacy of colossal heads, intricately carved altars, and sprawling ceremonial centers that hint at a society of extraordinary complexity. Unlike the ethereal disappearance of Carol or the ritual burnings of Tripilia, the Olmecs left a presence that is both monumental and silent, their intentions frozen in stone and their societal collapse a mystery wrapped in permanence. Walking among the ruins of San Lorenzo and La Vena today, one feels the weight of both ingenuity and unanswered questions, a sensation that lingers softly like the echo of a long-forgotten chant in the rainforest. The colossal stone heads of the Olmecs are among the most striking symbols of this civilization, each one carefully carved from massive basalt boulders transported over many miles. Their sheer scale and attention to detail suggest a highly organized workforce, advanced knowledge of engineering, and deep reverence for the individuals these statues represent. Some scholars believe they depict rulers or elite figures, while others see them as spiritual guardians, connecting the mortal world to unseen realms. The act of moving and carving these heads would have required coordination, skill, and shared purpose, a silent testament to the society's social cohesion and cultural sophistication. Yet, for all their strength and permanence, these stone guardians could not prevent the eventual fading of the civilization that created them. The Olmec cities themselves reveal a carefully constructed urban landscape, with ceremonial mounds, plazas, and ritualistic alignments that suggest an acute awareness of cosmic patterns. Waterways were manipulated to support agriculture and transportation, and public spaces hint at communal gatherings, religious ceremonies, and intricate social hierarchies. Life in these centers must have been vibrant, a blend of spiritual practice, daily labor, and artistic expression. Pottery, figurines, and jade objects reveal an aesthetic sensibility and symbolic language that resonate even today, a quiet dialogue across the centuries. And yet, despite these achievements, the Olmecs gradually receded from history, leaving behind a civilization known more for its art and stone monuments than for any written account of its people or governance. The reasons behind the Olmec decline are layered in subtle uncertainty. Some researchers point to environmental changes, shifts in river courses, soil depletion, or prolonged droughts that may have undermined agriculture and destabilized communities. Others suggest internal societal factors, such as political upheaval or the fracturing of elite control, may have contributed to a slow disintegration of centralized authority. Unlike the sudden abandonment of Caral or the ritualized burnings of Tripilia, Olmec decline appears to have been gradual, a quiet ebb that allowed cultural elements to survive and diffuse into neighboring societies, influencing later civilizations like the Maya and Aztec. The contrast between the permanence of their stone creations and the impermanence of their social structures offers a compelling meditation on human endeavor and fragility. Archaeological evidence hints that the Olmecs maintained networks of trade and communication across vast distances, connecting the Gulf Coast with highland regions. Exotic materials like jade, obsidian, and serpentine were transported over hundreds of kilometers, signaling both economic sophistication and cultural exchange. Such connections may have supported their rise, but they also left the society vulnerable to shifts in supply, environmental stress, or regional instability. In this interplay between resilience and vulnerability, one can sense the tension that often underlies human civilizations. The same factors that enable grandeur may, in time, contribute to fragility. Even the ritual life of the Olmecs carries traces of profound mystery. Ceremonial centers suggest offerings, human or symbolic, and sacred spaces that align with celestial events. Yet the meaning behind these rituals remains partially obscured. Did they seek to influence the natural world, appease deities, or solidify political power? Perhaps all of these at once. The silence of the archaeological record on matters of belief allows us to imagine, calmly and contemplatively, the daily and ceremonial life of a civilization whose people must have felt both awe and belonging, yet whose final chapters remain unwritten. Standing among Olmec ruins today, the experience is both grounding and ethereal. The stone mounds and heads anchor us in tangible history, while the absence of narrative, letters, codices, or detailed records leaves space for quiet speculation. There's a gentle contrast here, one that echoes through the ages. The solidity of stone against the impermanence of human society, permanence against disappearance, known against unknown. It is a reminder that civilizations can endure materially while their social and political structures quietly dissolve, leaving mystery in the spaces once filled with human life. The Olmecs teach us that collapse need not always be abrupt or catastrophic. Civilizations can fade gradually, leaving impressions rather than dramatic voids, influencing future cultures even as their direct stories vanish. This gradual transition creates a meditation on continuity and legacy, showing how the echoes of one society can inform the emergence of another. As their culture dissolved, ideas and art forms spread, seeding new civilizations across Mesoamerica, demonstrating that disappearance does not equate to erasure, but rather transformation. As the rainforest slowly reclaims Olmec ceremonial centers, roots entwining with stone and leaves drifting across ancient plazas, one senses the peaceful persistence of nature alongside human ambition. The Olmecs, though gone, left behind a quiet resonance, a civilization captured in sculpture, in the subtle geometry of their cities, and the faint patterns of ritual life. This resonance is both calming and mysterious, inviting reflection on how human brilliance can endure while the people themselves recede into history. Leaving behind the lush lowlands of Olmec lands, we shift our attention to the windswept highlands of Central America, where the Maya later rose with astonishing intellectual and architectural achievements. Like the Olmecs before them, the Maya reached extraordinary heights, yet their civilization, too, would experience decline and abandonment, leaving behind silent cities and dense jungles, their mysteries whispering softly through the trees. From stone faces and ceremonial mounds to the silent ruins swallowed by forest, the journey continues, revealing the delicate interplay of human aspiration and the quiet inevitability of change. Deep within the verdant jungles of Central America, a civilization rose that would become synonymous with astronomical knowledge, monumental architecture, and intricate writing, the Maya. Spanning the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, Belize, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador, the Maya civilization flourished for more than a millennium, reaching its peak during the Classic period from roughly 250 to 900 CE. Unlike the quiet disappearance of Carol or the ritualized burnings of Tripilia, the Maya left behind sprawling cities adorned with towering pyramids, intricate stucco carvings, and hieroglyphic inscriptions that record dynasties, wars, and rituals. Yet, despite this wealth of cultural and historical evidence, many of the great southern cities, Tikal, Copan, Palenque, experienced sudden and profound abandonment, leaving dense forests to reclaim plazas and temples, and giving modern observers a haunting glimpse into both human ingenuity and fragility. The Maya were masters of astronomy and timekeeping, developing complex calendars that tracked solar, lunar, and planetary cycles with remarkable precision. Their observations were not mere curiosities, but deeply entwined with ritual life and governance, guiding agricultural cycles, ceremonial events, and political legitimacy. From the alignment of pyramids with solstices to the intricate carvings on stele marking celestial events, the Maya infused the heavens into the fabric of everyday life. Yet, in a striking contrast, the very same cities that once thrummed with ceremonial and civic activity were gradually abandoned, leaving silent stone plazas where astronomers and priests once measured the heavens with careful reverence. Archaeological evidence points to multiple factors that contributed to the Maya collapse, each interwoven with the others in subtle and complex ways. Environmental pressures, such as prolonged droughts, likely strained water supplies and disrupted agriculture, creating the conditions for social unrest. Intensifying warfare between city-states further destabilized political structures, fracturing the alliances and networks that had sustained regional cohesion. Overpopulation, soil depletion, and resource mismanagement compounded the challenges, revealing the delicate balance between environmental stewardship and societal survival. It was not a single cataclysm, but a cascade of pressures, gently but relentlessly unraveling the intricate web of Maya civilization. The abandonment of major southern cities appears both abrupt and deliberate. Archaeologists note that many structures were left intact, with houses, temples, and palaces showing little evidence of destruction from conquest. Artifacts, household items, and ceremonial objects were often left behind, suggesting a population that departed quickly yet without obvious chaos. The forest slowly encroached, vines climbing the stepped pyramids and roots prying apart stone walls, transforming bustling urban centers into silent, verdant ruins. This transition from human vibrancy to forest reclamation creates a poignant contrast, highlighting both the permanence of monumental architecture and the impermanence of the society that built it. Yet unlike Carol or Tripilia, the Maya civilization did not vanish entirely. Northern cities such as Chichen Itza and Uxmal continued to flourish for centuries after the southern lowlands were abandoned, preserving and adapting aspects of classic period culture. This regional variation underscores the complexity of the collapse, suggesting that environmental, political, and social pressures did not strike uniformly, but rather influenced different areas in distinct ways. It is a reminder that civilization is never monolithic. It rises and falls unevenly, leaving fragments of life and culture to echo through subsequent generations. The rich material culture of the Maya, ceramics, jade ornaments, murals, and carved stele, provides glimpses into daily life, spiritual practices, and artistic expression. Even as cities emptied, the sophistication of Maya craftsmanship remains, a silent testament to their intellectual and aesthetic achievements. Observing these artifacts, one senses the deep interplay between human creativity and the forces that eventually led to societal decline. There is a gentle, contemplative tension here. The artistry endures, while the bustling human presence fades, leaving a world simultaneously rich with knowledge and filled with unanswered questions. The Maya collapse also illuminates the human response to stress and uncertainty. As droughts intensified and resources dwindled, city-states may have struggled to maintain social cohesion, leading to migration, internal strife, and shifts in political authority. Rituals, ceremonies, and elite power structures, once central to maintaining order, may have lost their stabilizing influence, accelerating societal decline. Unlike the ritual burnings of Tripilia, this decline unfolded more as a quiet unraveling, a slow fading of population and authority rather than a dramatic, deliberate act. It is in this subtlety that the Maya story resonates. History can turn quietly, invisibly, reshaping human communities without immediate spectacle. Walking through the overgrown plazas of Tikal or the terraces of Copan today, one experiences the interplay of permanence and ephemerality. The stone temples rise above the forest canopy, reminders of human ingenuity, while the undergrowth silently reclaims streets and courtyards, illustrating nature's patient reclamation. The soundscape, once filled with ritual music, market chatter, and the echo of ceremonial drums, is now dominated by birdsong and the rustle of leaves, creating a meditative, almost hypnotic atmosphere. The Maya collapse, though tragic, unfolds with a poetic rhythm, blending history, mystery, and the slow passage of time into a quiet narrative that invites reflection. The legacy of the Maya also underscores the continuity of knowledge and culture. Despite the collapse of southern cities, Maya descendants persist in the region today, preserving language, traditions, and ritual knowledge that trace back to the classic period. This endurance emphasizes that collapse is rarely total. It transforms rather than erases, leaving traces of civilization to inform future generations. The interplay between disappearance and survival deepens the sense of contrast between what is known and what is lost, heightening the reflective and immersive quality of the story. As we leave the jungles and towering pyramids of the Maya, we follow history's subtle currents into the arid landscapes of North America, where yet another ancient culture arose, thrived, and mysteriously disappeared. The ancestral Puebloans, builders of cliff dwellings and canyon cities, present a different type of enigma, a society whose architectural genius endures, yet whose population gradually vanished from their iconic homes. From the verdant, stone-filled cities of the Maya to the sun-baked cliffs of the Southwest, the narrative continues, tracing the delicate dance of human achievement and the quiet inevitability of change. High in the arid canyons and mesas of the American Southwest, a civilization emerged that would leave a remarkable architectural legacy, yet vanish with little trace of its final chapters. The ancestral Puebloans, often referred to as the Anasazi, flourished from roughly 100 CE to 1300 CE, constructing vast cliff dwellings, multi-story pueblos, and complex ceremonial kivas. These settlements, such as those at Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Canyon de Chelly, reveal extraordinary ingenuity in adapting to a harsh, arid environment. Water management systems, agricultural terraces, and sun-aligned buildings suggest that the ancestral Puebloans possessed both practical engineering skills and a profound understanding of their landscape. Walking through the ruins today, one feels both the grandeur of human endeavor and the quiet mystery left in the wake of sudden abandonment. The cliff dwellings themselves are architectural marvels, perched high on canyon walls or tucked into alcoves with natural defensive advantages. Thousands of people once lived in these stone and adobe structures, navigating narrow stairways and ladders, storing food, and conducting rituals and kivas that remain hauntingly intact. Each dwelling and communal space was carefully planned, reflecting both social organization and spiritual belief. The contrast between the permanence of stone and adobe and the ephemeral nature of the communities they sheltered is striking. These structures endure as silent witnesses, capturing the rhythm of daily life while concealing the reasons for the civilization's disappearance. Environmental factors are believed to have played a central role in the ancestral Puebloan decline. Prolonged droughts, possibly lasting decades, would have severely strained agriculture in the arid Southwest, reducing crop yields and water availability. Soil depletion and deforestation may have compounded these stresses, making previously habitable regions increasingly inhospitable. Archaeological evidence, including tree ring analysis, confirms periods of significant climate stress coinciding with waves of abandonment. These environmental pressures, combined with resource competition and social tensions, likely initiated migrations from the high mesas to lower, more sustainable regions or to other communities better suited to withstand the harsh conditions. Social and political factors may have further influenced the exodus from these remarkable settlements. Chaco Canyon, for example, functioned as a cultural and administrative hub, linking distant communities through a network of roads and ceremonial centers. The decline of such central authority may have disrupted trade, ritual cohesion, and mutual support among scattered settlements, amplifying the challenges posed by environmental stress. Evidence of internal conflict, fortifications, and shifts in population patterns suggest that societal pressures, alongside ecological hardship, nudge communities toward relocation. The decision to abandon once thriving centers appears deliberate, driven by survival rather than sudden catastrophe. Despite their eventual departure, the ancestral Puebloans left behind a rich material and spiritual legacy. Pottery, woven textiles, and intricate basketry testify to artistic sophistication, while ceremonial spaces and petroglyphs reveal the depth of religious practice and community identity. Each artifact carries the subtle imprint of a people in harmony with their environment, capable of transforming stone and earth into structures that balanced utility, beauty, and spiritual meaning. Yet, for all these achievements, the narrative abruptly shifts from life to silence, leaving observers to piece together stories from walls, shards, and the landscape itself. The abandonment of these cliff dwellings and canyon cities offers a unique meditation on human resilience and vulnerability. Unlike societies that fall to invasion or sudden disaster, the ancestral Puebloans appear to have relocated in response to slow-moving pressures, choosing paths of survival over confrontation with insurmountable challenges. Their story illustrates a civilization attuned to its environment, capable of extraordinary adaptation, yet ultimately constrained by the limits of resources, climate, and social cohesion. The quiet nature of this decline, paired with the enduring physical presence of their homes, invites reflection on the subtle rhythms of societal change and the interplay between permanence and impermanence. Modern visitors wandering through the sun-dappled ruins of Mesa Verde or climbing the steps to a cliffside kiva experience a profound sense of stillness. The structures, while abandoned, retain the echo of human presence. The memory of families, craftsmen, and ceremonial gatherings lingers in the stone. Nature, too, has softened the edges of human construction. Winds erode walls, plants creep into cracks, and wildlife moves freely through spaces once filled with human life. This gentle reclamation by the natural world heightens the contrast between human endeavor and the quiet passage of time, creating a contemplative atmosphere that encourages both curiosity and reverie. The ancestral Puebloan story resonates as a reminder of the delicate balance required to sustain human societies, especially in challenging environments. Resources must be managed wisely, social cohesion maintained, and rituals or governance carefully nurtured to prevent gradual decline. In their disappearance, these people leave a lesson etched into stone and landscape. Even the most carefully organized communities are vulnerable to a convergence of natural and social pressures. The mystery is not one of dramatic catastrophe, but of quiet disappearance, an unfolding that leaves behind only fragments and the enduring imprint of human ingenuity. As we leave the high mesas and cliff dwellings of the ancestral Puebloans, the narrative gently shifts across continents and oceans to explore civilizations whose sudden collapses still echo in history's shadow. From the American Southwest, we turn toward the islands of the Mediterranean, where the Minoans of Crete built palaces that shimmered with artistry and complexity, only to decline under enigmatic circumstances. The journey continues, connecting distant lands through the universal themes of human aspiration, achievement, and the subtle forces that can render even the most vibrant societies silent. On the sun-kissed island of Crete, nestled between the Aegean Sea and the rugged mountains, the Minoan civilization flourished with a brilliance that still captivates historians and archaeologists today. From roughly 2700 to 1450 BCE, the Minoans developed a sophisticated culture known for its palatial centers, vibrant frescoes, intricate pottery, and advanced maritime trade networks. Cities such as Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea were not merely settlements. They were hubs of administration, art, and spirituality, connected by roads and waterways that facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural practices across the Aegean and beyond. Yet, despite this vibrancy, the civilization mysteriously declined, leaving behind grand palaces slowly reclaimed by nature, their corridors echoing with the silent stories of vanished rulers and artisans. The palaces of the Minoans are remarkable in both scale and design. Multi-storied structures with labyrinthine corridors, elaborate drainage systems, and light-filled courtyards reveal a society capable of complex engineering and urban planning. Frescoes depicting dancers, dolphins, and ceremonial rituals convey a society deeply attuned to art, nature, and spirituality. Unlike civilizations that left extensive written records of law or war, the Minoans inscribed linear a script, a still undeciphered writing system, leaving modern scholars with tantalizing fragments of their communication, commerce, and perhaps even religious practices. The contrast between the tangible magnificence of their architecture and the elusive meaning of their writings underscores the persistent mystery surrounding their sudden decline. Trade and maritime prowess were central to Minoan society. They established extensive networks reaching Egypt, the Levant, and other Aegean islands, exporting pottery, olive oil, and crafted goods while importing raw materials and luxury items. This interconnectedness brought wealth and influence, but may have also introduced vulnerabilities, from economic fluctuations to cultural pressures, that could unsettle even the most resilient of societies. The Minoans' reliance on maritime routes reflects both their ingenuity and their exposure to forces beyond their control. Stormy seas, shifting alliances, and the unpredictable rhythms of human exchange. Archaeological evidence suggests that natural disasters may have played a critical role in the civilization's collapse. The volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, around 1600 BCE unleashed ash clouds, tsunamis, and climate disturbances that would have devastated crops, settlements, and trade networks. Earthquakes, too, were common in the region, frequently damaging the palaces and infrastructure that sustained daily life. While no single catastrophe can fully explain the decline, the cumulative impact of environmental stressors, coupled with potential social and political instability, paints a picture of a society under mounting pressure. In this interplay of human achievement and natural unpredictability, the story of the Minoans echoes timelessly, reminding us of the fragile balance between civilization and environment. The eventual decline of the Minoans appears to have been gradual yet inexorable. Archaeologists note evidence of palace destruction, shifts in settlement patterns, and changes in material culture that suggest periods of social upheaval and adaptation. Some theories propose invasions or external conquest, possibly by Mycenaean Greeks, while others emphasize internal political shifts or economic disruptions. Whatever the exact combination of factors, the outcome was a fading of the vibrant Minoan cultural presence, leaving monumental architecture and art as silent witnesses to a civilization that had once thrived on the edge of the Mediterranean. The cultural and spiritual life of the Minoans continues to inspire fascination. Religious symbols, ceremonial spaces, and depictions of bull-leaping rituals suggest a society deeply invested in ritual, mythology, and connection with the natural world. Unlike societies whose decline was accompanied by violent destruction, the Minoans' disappearance is marked by subtle traces of human continuity and adaptation, leaving researchers to imagine the rhythms of daily life amidst the grandeur of palaces and the vibrant frescoes that still cling to crumbling walls. There is a poetic quality in this juxtaposition. The vibrancy of life preserved in art contrasts with the silence of empty corridors, creating a contemplative, almost meditative, atmosphere for modern observers. Exploring the ruins of Knossos today, one feels the tension between permanence and impermanence, human ambition and the inexorable forces of nature. The labyrinthine halls, once bustling with activity, now hold only shadows of the past, while the Mediterranean sun illuminates fragments of frescoed walls, reminding us that beauty and knowledge endure even when the people themselves recede from the stage of history. This gentle interplay between what remains and what is lost captures the essence of the Minoan story. A civilization at once brilliant, fragile, and enigmatic, whose echoes continue to inspire curiosity and reflection. The Minoans also leave a subtle lesson about the interconnectedness of civilizations. Trade, cultural exchange, and environmental dependence contributed to their prosperity, yet these same factors rendered them vulnerable to collapse. The legacy of their architecture, artistry, and undeciphered script invites contemplation on the delicate balance required to sustain complex societies, emphasizing that human ingenuity alone cannot guarantee survival in the face of environmental, social, and political pressures. As we leave the palaces and sunlit shores of Crete, our journey moves eastward into the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians built some of the world's first urban centers. Like the Minoans, they reached remarkable heights in governance, writing, and innovation, only to face eventual decline, leaving ruins that whisper ancient secrets across millennia. From the Aegean to the Tigris and Euphrates, the narrative continues, exploring the recurring patterns of human ambition, achievement, and the quiet, inevitable transformations that time imposes on civilizations. In examining the sudden disappearances and mysterious declines of so many ancient civilizations, patterns begin to emerge, subtle threads woven through time and geography. While each society existed in its own unique landscape, under different rulers, climates, and challenges, there are echoes that link them together. What makes a civilization fragile, and what allows it to unravel so completely? Often, the clues are not in dramatic battles or singular cataclysmic events, but in the quiet erosion of stability, the unseen pressures accumulating over decades or centuries. As we step back from the stories of Egypt, the Minoans, and the Indus Valley, we can begin to trace these recurring rhythms, recognizing the anatomy of collapse in a way that is both gentle and profound. At the heart of many collapses lies the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental limits. Cities rise in fertile valleys, along rivers, and on strategic trade routes, their success shaped by access to resources. Yet, nature remains an unpredictable partner. Slight shifts in rainfall, temperature, or soil fertility can tip the scales, especially in societies heavily reliant on agriculture. When droughts persist or river courses change, the effects ripple outward, weakening political structures and economic networks. Unlike sudden disasters, this kind of pressure accumulates silently, leaving only subtle archaeological footprints, worn terraces, abandoned wells, and overgrown canals that hint at a story of quiet decline rather than dramatic destruction. Social and political structures themselves can become fragile under the weight of complexity. In sprawling urban centers, leadership, bureaucracy, and trade networks must function in delicate harmony. Internal tensions, disputes over succession, or corruption may seem minor at first, yet these cracks deepen over time. Trade interruptions or competition for resources exacerbate these vulnerabilities, creating a feedback loop that can quietly erode societal cohesion. From afar, a city may appear stable, its monuments gleaming in the sunlight, while beneath the surface, the structures holding daily life together are slowly weakening. The contrast between what we can see and what remains hidden is central to the mystery of collapse. Archaeologists uncover ruins, inscriptions, and artifacts, yet the stories of human fear, hope, and adaptation often vanish entirely. We are left with stone temples and mud brick streets as evidence of ingenuity, juxtaposed against the silence that follows disappearance. In that quiet, imagination fills the gaps. We picture bustling marketplaces emptied overnight, ceremonial centers abandoned, and families migrating under the invisible weight of mounting pressures. This duality between the tangible and the unknowable draws us into a reflective state, inviting contemplation rather than shock. Importantly, not every collapse is instantaneous. Many civilizations fade slowly, their declines stretching across generations, yet appearing abrupt in hindsight. The perception of suddenness often emerges because modern observers only witness the end, not the gradual erosion. Mountains rise and rivers shift imperceptibly. Political alliances fracture quietly. Trade networks dwindle. Populations migrate. From our distant vantage point, it seems as though entire civilizations vanished overnight. Yet within those transitions lies a profound lesson. The interconnectedness of human and environmental systems, and the fragility that accompanies complexity. As we meditate on these patterns, we can also appreciate the resilience embedded in human history. Even as one city falls, ideas, technologies, and cultural practices survive, often absorbed by neighboring societies or re-emerging centuries later in new forms. Collapse, then, is not merely an end, it is transformation. The echoes of these vanished civilizations reverberate through architecture, agriculture, language, and art, leaving traces for us to ponder. By recognizing these patterns, we prepare ourselves to encounter the next set of mysterious declines, those that seem even more abrupt or enigmatic, yet are bound by the same quiet forces. With these insights in mind, we move forward into the next stories, civilizations whose silence is even more profound, whose disappearance challenges our understanding of continuity and change. We carry with us the awareness that collapse is rarely simple, rarely dramatic in its initial stages, but always layered and intricate. The ruins we observe are not just monuments to the past. They are mirrors reflecting the delicate dance between human ambition and the natural world, between order and entropy, between what we know and what remains forever uncertain. In this gentle reflection, we find both curiosity and calm, preparing us to explore the next chapter of vanished worlds. The Etruscans are a people whose story is written in the shadows of history, with much of their civilization swallowed by the growth of Rome. Nestled in the central part of the Italian peninsula, the Etruscan cities were once vibrant hubs of culture, wealth, and influence. Today, however, much of their legacy is lost to time, and what remains is fragmented, leaving historians with tantalizing glimpses of a civilization that played a pivotal role in shaping the early Roman world. As we approach their story, it's important to understand that the Etruscans were not a singular, unified empire like the Romans, but rather a collection of city-states, each with its own ruler, customs, and ways of life. These cities, including the well-known Tarquinia, Cerveteri, and Veii, were centers of art, trade, and politics. The Etruscans had a sophisticated society that engaged in extensive trade with other Mediterranean civilizations, including the Greeks, Phoenicians, and Egyptians. They were known for their skilled craftsmanship, intricate tombs, vibrant frescoes, and elaborate religious practices. Their language, now deciphered in part but still partly mysterious, was distinct from Latin and Greek, further deepening the enigma of their identity. They had a rich pantheon of gods, many of whom were later adopted by the Romans, and their religious rituals were central to the life of their society. In fact, it was the Etruscans who taught the Romans much about religious ceremonies and augury, the interpretation of omens through the flight of birds. Yet, despite this sophistication, much of the Etruscan story is shrouded in mystery. The reason for this silence is intertwined with the rise of Rome, a force that would eventually absorb and erase the Etruscan civilization. The fall of the Etruscans wasn't the result of a single battle or sudden catastrophe. Instead, it was a gradual process, a slow decline compounded by a variety of factors. Rome's rise as a republic in the 6th century BCE began to challenge the Etruscan city-states, many of which were powerful in their own right. But Rome, with its well-organized military and strategic alliances, was a force that could not be easily ignored. Over time, the Romans expanded their territory, eventually conquering Etruscan cities one by one. This conquest was not without resistance. Cities like Veii fought fiercely against Roman forces, and there are stories of intense battles, including the Siege of Veii, which lasted for a decade before the city finally fell to the Romans in 396 BCE. But the downfall of the Etruscans cannot be explained solely through military conquest. There were other factors at play. The Etruscans' reliance on city-state independence left them vulnerable to external threats. They were also beset by internal divisions, as their political system was not as unified as that of Rome. Where Rome's citizens were drawn together by a sense of shared identity and a single political framework, the Etruscan city-states often struggled to cooperate. This lack of cohesion meant that they couldn't mount a unified defense against the Roman expansion. Moreover, there were also shifts in trade routes. As Rome's power grew, it began to control the vital trade networks that had once been central to Etruscan wealth. Cities that were once thriving centers of commerce gradually withered as they were cut off from the flow of goods and resources that had made them prosperous. The economic decline was perhaps as decisive as the military defeats, leading to further fragmentation and vulnerability. In the 4th century BCE, Rome and its allies continued to expand, and many Etruscan cities were either destroyed or absorbed into the Roman Republic. By the early 1st century BCE, the Etruscan civilization had all but disappeared from the historical record. However, their legacy didn't vanish completely. In the aftermath of their fall, the Romans adopted many Etruscan customs, religious practices, and artistic styles. Even the Roman alphabet is thought to have been derived from the Etruscan script, which itself was based on the Greek alphabet. The Etruscans' decline is an example of the quiet, almost imperceptible way civilizations can fade into history. Unlike the cataclysmic falls of empires brought down by internal revolts or natural disasters, the Etruscans were absorbed, their culture slowly submerged beneath the tides of Rome's dominance. The Romans, in many ways, owe much of their own culture, religion, and even military strategy to the Etruscans, yet they erased the memory of their former teachers in the process. There's a certain sadness to the Etruscan story, an elegiac quality that resonates with the mystery of what is lost when a civilization fades away. The tombs they left behind, adorned with elaborate frescoes and delicate pottery, tell us of their beliefs, their joys, and their fears. The rich artwork and artifacts speak of a society deeply attuned to the spiritual world, with a respect for the dead that contrasts sharply with the practical, militaristic approach of the Romans. In many ways, the Etruscans were the poets, the dreamers, the artists of the ancient Mediterranean. The contrast between their delicate, artistic heritage and the brutal expansion of Rome serves as a powerful metaphor for how cultures can be subsumed by more aggressive forces. The Etruscans didn't fall suddenly. Their decline was a drawn-out process, with moments of intense resistance, but no final, defining collapse. Instead, They were gently absorbed, their influence woven into the fabric of Roman life. Yet their names slowly faded from the annals of history. Today, the Etruscans' legacy survives in fragments, carved stones, painted walls, and the faint whispers of their language, offering clues to a civilization whose voice has been nearly erased. Yet, like so many other forgotten cultures, their story remains etched in the landscapes they left behind. The tombs and the ruins are silent witnesses to a world that once flourished, a world that has slipped into the quiet corners of time. As we reflect on the Etruscans, we're reminded of how easily civilizations can be forgotten, how their legacies can be swept away by the march of history. What remains are not the people themselves, but the vestiges they left behind, their art, their beliefs, their symbols. These remnants, though small, serve as reminders of the richness of human history and the fragility of human achievement. And in the quiet corners of Etruscan tombs and ruins, we find a piece that echoes through time, inviting us to ponder the mystery of civilizations lost but never fully erased. The Anasazi, or the ancestral Puebloans, are a people whose story unfolds beneath the wide skies and rugged cliffs of the American Southwest. Once their vibrant culture flourished in what is now Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah, creating one of the most intriguing and mysterious archaeological legacies of ancient North America. They built great stone dwellings, cliff dwellings, and multi-story pueblos, constructed with precise masonry and intricate designs. These buildings, tucked in canyon alcoves and perched on mesas, speak to a people who understood their environment deeply, shaping their world with a combination of skill and respect for the land they inhabited. At the heart of their civilization were the great houses, massive communal structures that served as both homes and centers of ceremonial life. These dwellings, often composed of hundreds of rooms, were architectural marvels, demonstrating the Anasazi's advanced understanding of building techniques. The most famous of these is Chaco Canyon, a place of incredible significance to the ancestral Puebloans. Chaco Canyon was a major center of culture, trade, and politics, its great stone buildings and plazas forming a kind of spiritual and physical nexus for the surrounding communities. For generations, it was a hub of activity, drawing people from all over the region to participate in its ceremonies and exchange goods. The city itself was a testament to the Anasazi's ability to organize large-scale labor forces and establish extensive trade networks. However, despite this ingenuity and the apparent flourishing of their society, the Anasazi civilization began to unravel, and by the late 12th century, the great houses were abandoned. The reasons for this sudden departure are not entirely clear, and this mystery remains one of the most enduring questions about the ancestral Puebloans. The transition from thriving cultural centers to ghostly ruins, scattered with potsherds and crumbling walls, is not one that can be explained easily. Environmental factors seem to have played a significant role in the Anasazi's decline. During the height of their civilization, the Southwest experienced a relatively wet period, which allowed for the cultivation of crops like corn, beans, and squash. However, around the late 12th century, a period of severe drought began to take hold. The Colorado Plateau, where the Anasazi lived, is an arid region to begin with, and even small changes in rainfall patterns can have devastating consequences for communities reliant on farming. As the droughts deepened, the water sources that sustained their crops and daily life began to dry up, and the once thriving agricultural fields began to wither. But drought alone does not account for the full story of the Anasazi's disappearance. There were other factors at play, some social, others political. The Anasazi lived in a deeply interconnected world, and the abandonment of Chaco Canyon and other great houses may have been linked to shifts in trade routes and intercommunity relations. The Anasazi were known to have extensive trade networks, and as the climate changed, it's possible that these networks were disrupted, leading to a breakdown in the economic systems that supported the population. The Anasazi were also a people who valued communal living and cooperation. However, as resources became more scarce and competition for water and food increased, tensions between different groups may have heightened. Evidence from archaeological sites suggests that some Anasazi communities were involved in violent confrontations, possibly linked to resource scarcity or political power struggles. These internal conflicts, combined with external environmental pressures, likely accelerated the process of abandonment. The social fabric of the Anasazi seems to have fractured as the drought deepened and the once thriving settlements were abandoned. The great houses, so full of life and purpose, were left behind. But where did the people go? The question of their migration remains another intriguing mystery. Some believe that the Anasazi dispersed to other areas of the Southwest, while others suggest they may have merged with other indigenous groups. The Hopi and Zuni tribes, for example, are sometimes thought to be the descendants of the Anasazi, preserving elements of their language and culture. Others speculate that the Anasazi may have retreated into smaller, more mobile settlements, adapting to a life that no longer revolved around grand stone structures. In the end, the legacy of the Anasazi is not one of sudden destruction, but of gradual transformation. Their collapse wasn't a single event or a dramatic battle, but rather the quiet disappearance of a way of life over the course of decades. The great houses they left behind, perched on cliffs and tucked into canyons, are silent witnesses to this slow unraveling. These structures, now eroded by time, still stand as powerful symbols of human ingenuity and resilience. Yet, they also serve as poignant reminders of the fragility of civilization. The cliffs and ruins of Chaco Canyon and other Anasazi sites are awe-inspiring, but they are also haunting. The silence that envelopes these places today is a stark contrast to the bustling activity that once filled them. The streets of Chaco, lined with stone walls and ceremonial plazas, are now empty. The air is still, save for the occasional whisper of wind through the canyon. It is a silence that invites contemplation of the rise and fall of civilizations, of human ambition and the forces of nature that shape our destinies. The abandonment of the great houses also speaks to the complexity of human adaptation. The Anasazi did not disappear. They adapted, finding new ways to survive in a harsh environment. Yet, the grand vision of their urban centers, their carefully planned communities, and their intricate ceremonial life vanished with the collapse of their agricultural system and the breakdown of social order. The mystery surrounding their disappearance, the droughts, the migrations, the political conflicts, continue to captivate historians and archaeologists today. Each new discovery offers more insight into the lives of these ancient people, yet the true reasons for their fall remain elusive. As we ponder the story of the Anasazi, we are reminded that the passage of time is both a healer and a destroyer. The ruins that remain from their civilization are not merely relics of a lost culture. They're profound messages from the past, urging us to reflect on our own relationship with the environment, with each other, and with the legacies we leave behind. The Anasazi's sudden disappearance, like so many ancient civilizations before them, is a powerful reminder of the impermanence of human endeavors and the delicate balance between civilization and nature. And so, the ghostly remnants of the Anasazi great houses, half hidden in the shadow of canyon walls and crumbling in the harsh desert sun, remain. Their story is one of beauty, resilience, and loss. A story told not only through the stones they left behind, but through the unanswered questions that continue to echo through the wind-swept ruins. In their silence, they invite us to listen carefully, to reflect deeply, and to remember that the rise and fall of civilizations is as much about what is lost as what is preserved. The Mississippian culture, centered around the great city of Cahokia, once thrived in the fertile floodplains of the Mississippi River. Long before European settlers arrived, this civilization built an intricate society characterized by monumental earthworks, bustling plazas, and a highly organized social structure. Cahokia, the largest urban center in pre-Columbian North America, sprawled across hundreds of acres, with thousands of inhabitants living in carefully arranged neighborhoods. At the heart of the city rose Monk's Mound, an enormous earthen pyramid that symbolized the power, religious devotion, and ingenuity of the Mississippian people. Standing atop it, one could observe a landscape shaped by both human hands and natural rhythms, a civilization deeply attuned to its environment, yet vulnerable to its shifts. Life in Cahokia was a delicate balance between community, ritual, and the natural world. The city's layout was carefully planned, with wide avenues, ceremonial plazas, and residential zones that accommodated the thousands of people who called Cahokia home. Agriculture played a central role, with maize cultivation forming the foundation of the Mississippian diet. The people also hunted, fished, and gathered, creating a subsistence system that was closely tied to the seasonal patterns of the river valley. Beyond sustenance, Cahokia was a cultural hub, with artisans producing finely crafted pottery, shell ornaments, and stone tools. The city's influence radiated outward, reaching smaller towns and villages, creating a network of trade and cultural exchange that stretched for hundreds of miles. Yet despite this prosperity, Cahokia and the broader Mississippian culture eventually declined, leaving behind silent mounds and empty plazas. The causes of this disappearance are still debated, but the clues point to a combination of environmental, social, and political factors. Archaeologists have noted evidence of soil depletion, overhunting, and changes in water levels along the Mississippi River and its tributaries. As the city grew, the demands placed upon the land increased, and it is likely that the surrounding environment could no longer sustain such a dense population. Droughts, flooding, or fluctuations in river patterns could have further strained resources, making the city increasingly difficult to maintain. Social and political tensions may have also contributed to the decline. Cahokia was a hierarchical society, with elite rulers exerting control over the population. The construction of massive earthworks required organized labor and strong central authority. But as environmental pressures mounted and resources became scarcer, maintaining social cohesion may have become increasingly challenging. Evidence of fortified structures and signs of conflict suggest that some communities experienced internal strife or competition over limited resources. The delicate balance that had supported Cahokia's growth for centuries may have begun to falter under these combined pressures. Trade networks, so crucial to Cahokia's prosperity, may have also been disrupted. The city relied on the exchange of goods like copper, shell, and stone across long distances. Interruptions in these networks could have led to shortages of important materials, weakening the city's economic foundation. As the Mississippian culture faced these growing challenges, populations began to disperse, leaving the great mounds and plazas empty, silent witnesses to the once thriving civilization. The contrast between the bustling city of Cahokia and the quiet landscape that remains today is striking. Where once there were streets filled with people, markets brimming with goods, and ceremonies echoing across the plazas, there is now only wind rustling through tall grasses atop the earthen mounds. Monk's Mound, though still impressive, stands as a solitary sentinel over the empty floodplain, a reminder of human ambition and ingenuity tempered by the limits of the natural world. The silence is profound, but it carries with it a certain peace, a contemplative invitation to reflect on the cycles of growth and decline that shape all civilizations. Despite the disappearance of Cahokia, the legacy of the Mississippian culture endures in subtle ways. Descendant communities, including modern Native American tribes such as the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek, maintain traditions, stories, and cultural practices that echo the values and knowledge of the Mississippian people. Archaeological studies continue to uncover new insights into their lives, from the construction techniques of the mounds to the intricacies of their social hierarchy. Each artifact, each remnant of the city, serves as a bridge between the past and present, connecting us to a world that was once vibrant, complex, and full of life. The mystery of Cahokia's decline also reminds us that even the most organized, powerful, and seemingly permanent civilizations are vulnerable to the forces of nature and society. Unlike sudden catastrophes, Cahokia's end appears to have been a gradual process, unfolding over decades, yet leaving a mark that seems abrupt from our distant vantage point. This pattern resonates with other vanished civilizations we have explored. The accumulation of pressures, environmental, social, and economic, can quietly erode the foundations of even the most impressive human achievements. The result is a transformation rather than an immediate destruction, a shift in settlement patterns, a migration of people, and the quiet fading of cultural hubs. Visiting the mounds today, it is easy to imagine the rhythm of life that once filled the city. Children running along packed earth, traders exchanging goods, priests performing ceremonies atop the tallest mounds, and families tending to crops in the fertile fields nearby. Yet, as we observe the same landscape today, these images are overlaid with the calm, reflective silence of centuries. The mounds remain, enduring structures that both inspire wonder and evoke a sense of melancholy. They are monuments to human creativity, to the complexity of ancient societies, and to the quiet inevitability of change. Cahokia's story also carries a subtle lesson about resilience and continuity. While the city itself was abandoned, the knowledge, traditions, and cultural practices of its people lived on in smaller, dispersed communities. This suggests that collapse is rarely an absolute erasure. Instead, it is often a transformation, a reconfiguration of human life and society in response to changing circumstances. The Mississippian culture, in its quiet dispersal, adapted to the environment and preserved its essence in ways that are still visible to us through archaeology, oral histories, and cultural memory. As we leave Cahokia in our reflection, we are reminded of the delicate balance between human ambition and the forces that surround it. The rise and fall of this civilization, with its monumental achievements and its eventual disappearance, is a story that echoes the broader patterns we have explored. Civilizations flourish, reach their heights, and then, often imperceptibly, fade. The silence left behind is not empty. It is filled with lessons, questions, and an enduring mystery of what it means for a society to vanish from the landscape, yet leave its mark on history. The Khmer Empire, with its sprawling temples, vast waterworks, and monumental cities, represents one of the most extraordinary civilizations in Southeast Asia. At the heart of the empire lay Angkor, a capital unlike any other, where architecture, religion, and engineering intertwined to create a world of grandeur and precision. Here, stone towers pierced the sky, intricately carved bas-reliefs told the stories of gods and kings, and enormous reservoirs, called barays, controlled the flow of water across the landscape. Angkor was not merely a city. It was a living testament to the ingenuity and ambition of the Khmer people, a civilization that thrived in harmony with its environment yet remained deeply vulnerable to its fluctuations. Life in Angkor was a careful balancing act, orchestrated between human ambition and natural forces. The Khmer were master builders and planners, designing their cities with a combination of religious symbolism and practical functionality. Roads, canals, and reservoirs linked temples and neighborhoods, allowing water to be distributed to fields and cities alike. This sophisticated hydraulic system supported agriculture, feeding a population that may have exceeded several 100,000 people at its peak. Rice paddies stretched as far as the eye could see, producing the sustenance necessary to maintain both the population and the lavish court life of the kings who ruled from Angkor, Wat, Angkor Thom, and other monumental complexes. The empire was also a spiritual center, where religion guided the rhythms of daily life. Hinduism and later Mahayana Buddhism shaped not only the spiritual practices of the Khmer people, but also the very layout of their cities. Temples were constructed to reflect the cosmic order, connecting heaven and earth, with the central towers symbolizing Mount Meru, the mythical home of the gods. Life in the empire was thus deeply intertwined with belief, with rituals, ceremonies, and festivals marking the passage of seasons, the success of harvests, and the legitimacy of rulers. Yet, despite this brilliance, the Khmer Empire eventually experienced a decline that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for generations. Unlike the dramatic collapse of some civilizations through war or invasion, Angkor's fall seems to have been a more gradual, almost imperceptible process, driven by a combination of environmental, political, and social factors. Evidence suggests that the empire faced recurrent droughts and occasional flooding, placing enormous stress on its intricate hydraulic system. The delicate balance that had sustained agriculture, trade, and urban life for centuries began to falter. Reservoirs silted up, canals overflowed or dried out, and rice production could no longer support the population as it once had. Political dynamics also played a crucial role. The Khmer Empire was ruled by powerful monarchs whose authority was essential for maintaining the empire's vast infrastructure. As succession disputes arose or kings lost the ability to control distant provinces, the administrative and labor networks that maintained the waterworks weakened. Without careful oversight, the very systems that allowed Angkor to flourish became prone to failure, and the city's ability to support its population diminished. Additionally, internal unrest, local uprisings, and competition among elites may have compounded the strain on society, contributing to a slow unraveling rather than a single catastrophic collapse. Trade and contact with neighboring regions also shifted during this period. As maritime trade networks along the coasts of Southeast Asia expanded, economic power gradually moved away from the inland cities of Angkor toward emerging coastal centers. Goods, ideas, and influence flowed differently than they had for centuries, leaving the inland capital increasingly isolated. This combination of environmental challenges, administrative strain, and economic realignment created a situation in which the empire could no longer sustain its former glory. The most striking element of Angkor's decline is how thoroughly nature reclaimed the landscape. Today, the temples of Angkor sit partially hidden by jungle growth, their towers entwined with the roots of massive trees, their stone walls softened by moss and lichen. What were once bustling ceremonial plazas now echo with a whisper of wind through leaves. The contrast between the human ingenuity of the Khmer and the patient, persistent force of the jungle evokes a sense of quiet reflection. Civilization, no matter how grand, is never permanent. Time, weather, and the encroachment of nature slowly absorb even the mightiest achievements. Despite the city's decline, the Khmer Empire's cultural and architectural legacy endures. Angkor what remains one of the most iconic monuments in human history, a symbol of the creativity, spirituality, and organizational skill of the Khmer people. The intricate bas-reliefs, depicting epic battles, religious myths, and everyday life, preserve a visual record of a world that no longer exists. Even as the jungle surrounds it, the memory of Angkor's former brilliance persists, inviting awe and contemplation. It serves as a reminder that while civilizations may vanish, the echoes of their achievements can endure for centuries, inspiring future generations. The Khmer Empire's story also carries subtle lessons about resilience and adaptation. While Angkor was eventually abandoned as the population migrated to more sustainable areas, elements of Khmer culture continued in other parts of Southeast Asia. Language, religious practices, artistic styles, and governance models survived, influencing neighboring regions and future societies. Collapse, in this context, is not absolute erasure but transformation, an adaptation to changing circumstances, both environmental and political. The grandeur of Angkor may have faded, but its essence, encoded in architecture, ritual, and cultural memory, persisted. Reflecting on Angkor and the Khmer Empire, we are invited to contemplate the delicate interplay between human ambition and the natural world. The empire rose to incredible heights through organization, ingenuity, and devotion, yet it was ultimately constrained by the forces of nature and human limitations. The story of Angkor, like that of other vanished civilizations, is not one of sudden catastrophe, but of gradual transformation, a reminder that even the most remarkable societies are part of a larger, ongoing rhythm of rise, adaptation, and decline. Walking among the towering temples today, it is easy to imagine the life that once animated them. Processions along stone causeways, rituals performed by priests at dawn, markets bustling with trade, and children playing near water channels. All have faded into memory, preserved only in the stones and carvings left behind. The silence is profound, yet it carries a meditative beauty, a quiet invitation to reflect on the fragility and endurance of human achievement. In this gentle contemplation, we begin to understand the subtle forces that shape civilizations and the quiet mysteries that accompany their disappearance. The Khmer Empire, embraced by the jungle and slowly reclaimed by time, stands as a testament to the enduring interplay between human creativity and the inexorable rhythms of nature. Its story reminds us that the collapse of civilization is rarely sudden or absolute. It is a gradual, intricate process in which environmental pressures, political complexities, and social dynamics converge, leaving behind ruins that both astonish and invite reflection. And in these silent monuments, we find a space to ponder the cycles of history, the impermanence of even the greatest achievements, and the beauty of what endures when empires fade into memory. As we move through the stories of vanished civilizations, from the sun-drenched palaces of the Minoans to the towering temples of Angkor, certain patterns begin to emerge. The more closely we examine these collapses, the more we see that they are rarely the result of a single event. Instead, they are composed of interwoven threads: environmental pressures, social tensions, political complexities, and economic shifts. Each civilization was unique, yet the echoes of their decline reveal striking similarities, suggesting that the processes of rise, flourishing, and eventual dissolution are, in many ways, universal. This bridge, this reflective pause, allows us to step back and consider these patterns, tracing the anatomy of collapse across continents and centuries. In every case, there is a contrast between what is visible and what is hidden. Stone monuments, city walls, and ceremonial complexes endure, offering tangible evidence of human ingenuity. But the forces that led to decline, droughts, soil depletion, shifting trade routes, political disputes, often leave subtler traces buried beneath layers of earth and time. Archaeologists can reconstruct the outlines of daily life, trade networks, and religious practices, but the decisions, fears, and experiences of the people themselves remain largely inaccessible. This interplay between the visible and the invisible creates a persistent sense of mystery, a quiet tension that draws us closer to the past, encouraging contemplation rather than shock. Environmental change appears repeatedly as a central actor in the stories of lost civilizations. The Nile, the Aegean Sea, the Colorado Plateau, and the Mekong Delta each shaped the societies that depended upon them. Slight shifts in rainfall or temperature, gradual changes in river courses, or long-term climate fluctuations could undermine carefully balanced agricultural systems. Even in societies with advanced engineering, like the Khmer Empire or the Indus Valley, these pressures could slowly erode stability. Nature, patient and indifferent, quietly shapes human destiny. Its influence reminds us that no civilization exists in isolation. All are part of a larger web, vulnerable to subtle yet powerful forces. Social and political complexity also plays a critical role. Hierarchical systems, bureaucracies, and elite control allowed civilizations to flourish, organizing labor and coordinating monumental construction projects. Yet, these same structures could become fragile under stress. Disputes over succession, internal rivalries, and competition for resources could weaken the very foundations that supported society. In some cases, like Cahokia or the Anasazi Great Houses, social cohesion unraveled in the face of environmental pressures, illustrating how intertwined human relationships and natural systems truly are. The fragility lies not in the people themselves, but in the delicate balances that enable complex societies to function. Economic networks, trade connections, and cultural exchange often mask underlying vulnerabilities until it is too late. Civilizations like the Etruscans, the Maya, or the Khmer Empire depended on extensive systems of trade to supply essential resources and luxury goods alike. Disruptions, whether through environmental change, political conflict, or shifts in regional influence, could have cascading effects. Once the flow of goods slowed, economies weakened, populations migrated, and urban centers emptied. The suddenness we perceive in these collapses is often a result of viewing only the end, rather than the slow unraveling that preceded it. Perhaps most fascinating is the way these echoes across time reveal a cycle of transformation rather than absolute endings. While cities fell, pyramids crumbled, and palaces were abandoned, aspects of each civilization survived in different forms. Knowledge, art, religious practices, and cultural memory often persisted in descendant communities or neighboring societies. Even in disappearance, civilizations leave traces, remnants that guide future generations, shape new societies, and preserve the essence of human creativity. Collapse, therefore, is not merely destruction. It is evolution, a quiet transition from one form of human expression to another. This reflective pause also highlights the emotional resonance of these vanished societies. There is a subtle melancholy in contemplating abandoned ruins, empty plazas, and silent temples. Yet there is also wonder at the ingenuity, ambition, and resilience of people who created complex worlds in harmony with their environments. The contrast between what once was and what remains evokes a deep sense of connection, inviting us to witness the passage of time and to reflect on the impermanence of human achievement. It is a quiet meditation on both fragility and endurance, a moment to honor civilizations that shaped the world yet are now largely invisible to us. As we prepare to explore the final enigmatic cases, the civilizations whose voices are almost entirely lost, we carry with us this broader understanding. The lessons of the past are subtle but profound. Rise and fall are natural rhythms. Collapse is rarely sudden, and the traces of human ingenuity persist in forms that may surprise us. The echoes across time remind us that history is not merely a record of what happened, but a living conversation between the present and the past. By listening carefully, we can sense the patterns, learn from them, and appreciate the beauty of what endures, even when much has vanished. In this quiet reflection, we are ready to step into the last chapters of mystery, where disappearance is nearly complete and the stories that remain are fragmentary and haunting. It is here, in the liminal space between what is known and unknown, that we encounter civilizations whose silence speaks as loudly as their monuments ever did. And it is in this silence that we find both curiosity and calm, an invitation to contemplate the impermanence of human endeavor and the enduring resonance of history. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, as it is known to its inhabitants, stands as one of the most remote and enigmatic landscapes on Earth. Isolated in the vast Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the nearest continent, this small island became home to a civilization that produced monumental stone statues, complex ceremonial sites, and, most intriguingly, the mysterious Rongorongo script. The story of the Rapa Nui people is at once a tale of ingenuity and tragedy, a narrative that juxtaposes remarkable human achievement with profound disappearance, inviting both wonder and reflection. The island itself is a study in contrasts. Its volcanic slopes, fertile valleys, and rugged coastline provided the Rapa Nui people with the resources to sustain a thriving society for centuries. Yet the very isolation that allowed for such a unique culture also made it highly vulnerable to environmental pressures. The inhabitants transformed the island into a cultural and spiritual landscape, erecting hundreds of moai, massive stone statues that still gaze silently inland and toward the sea. Each moai is believed to represent an ancestor, a protector of the community, connecting the spiritual and the physical worlds. The construction, transport, and placement of these statues required extraordinary coordination, engineering skill, and social cohesion, reflecting a society that was both highly organized and deeply spiritual. Equally fascinating is the Rongorongo script, an undeciphered system of glyphs inscribed on wooden tablets, boards, and artifacts. These carvings remain one of the great mysteries of human history. Unlike the moai, which can be interpreted symbolically through their placement and form, the Rongorongo script offers only glimpses into the intellectual and cultural life of the Rapa Nui people. Was it a system of record-keeping, a religious text, or a mnemonic device for oral traditions? Scholars have debated its purpose for decades, yet the inability to decipher it leaves a profound sense of silence, an entire dimension of a civilization's knowledge and worldview lost to time. The contrast is striking. Massive stone monuments endure, while the subtler and arguably more significant intellectual heritage has vanished. The disappearance of the Rapa Nui people's societal structures adds another layer to the mystery. By the 18th century, when Europeans first arrived, the population had declined dramatically, and many aspects of their culture had already been altered or forgotten. Factors contributing to this decline likely included environmental degradation, deforestation, and soil depletion. The island's forests, once abundant, were cleared over centuries for agriculture, construction, and the transportation of moai. This deforestation may have led to erosion, reduced crop yields, and a scarcity of materials needed for daily life, placing enormous strain on social and political systems. The isolation of the island amplified these effects, limiting the capacity for trade or migration to mitigate shortages. Social dynamics likely compounded the environmental challenges. The construction of moai, while spiritually and culturally significant, would have required vast amounts of labor and resources. Competition among clans for prestige, power, and access to these monuments may have intensified internal tensions. Oral traditions suggest periods of conflict, including what has been termed the land wars, in which rival groups may have destroyed or toppled statues as part of struggles for dominance. The combination of environmental stress and social conflict would have eroded the cohesion of the Rapa Nui society, leaving the island fragmented and vulnerable. Yet, even in decline, the ingenuity and cultural richness of the Rapa Nui people remained evident. Their knowledge of agriculture allowed them to cultivate crops in challenging conditions, employing lithic mulching, placing stones around crops to retain moisture and enrich the soil. Their spiritual practices and artistic achievements persisted in the construction of ahu, ceremonial platforms that supported moai, and in the continued practice of oral traditions, which preserved genealogies, myths, and rituals. These accomplishments illustrate a society deeply connected to both its environment and its heritage, a civilization that found ways to thrive despite its isolation. The Rongorongo script, however, remains a haunting reminder of the fragility of human knowledge. Unlike the enduring stone statues, which offer visual and symbolic insight into Rapa Nui society, the wooden tablets and carvings of Rongorongo were vulnerable to decay and destruction. Fires, climate, and the passage of time claimed much of this intellectual record, leaving behind tantalizing fragments that hint at a lost world. The inability to fully understand these texts invites a sense of mystery, a recognition that no matter how advanced or organized a civilization, its knowledge can disappear entirely if the conditions are not right to preserve it. This duality between permanence and fragility, visibility and silence, permeates the story of Easter Island. The final chapters of the Rapa Nui story are both somber and reflective. By the time European contact reshaped the island in the 18th and 19th centuries, much of the population had already suffered from disease, slave raids, and the lingering effects of environmental and social stress. Yet the moai remain, towering over the landscape, silent witnesses to human ambition, creativity, and the limits imposed by nature and circumstance. The statues, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, offer a contemplative space, inviting us to reflect on the rise, flourishing, and quiet transformation of this unique civilization. In contemplating Easter Island, we are reminded of a broader lesson. Civilizations are not solely defined by their material achievements, but also by the knowledge, culture, and memory they leave behind. The Rapa Nui people created a world of remarkable artistic and spiritual significance, yet so much of their intellectual heritage, encoded in Rongorongo, is lost. This contrast between what endures and what vanishes is a central theme in the study of vanished civilizations. It underscores the fragile balance between human ambition and the environmental, social, and historical forces that shape the fate of societies. Finally, the story of Easter Island leaves us with a quiet meditation on impermanence, resilience, and mystery. The moai, the ceremonial platforms, and the surviving fragments of Rongorongo serve as reminders that even in disappearance, a civilization can leave echoes that resonate across time. These echoes invite curiosity, reflection, and reverence, offering lessons that extend beyond the island's shores. In the stillness of the Rapa Nui landscape, we sense the presence of those who came before, their lives intertwined with the land, their knowledge partially preserved, and their mysteries enduring, a silent testament to the enduring complexity and beauty of human history. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through vanished civilizations, we are invited to pause, to breathe, and to reflect on the delicate threads that connect past and present. From the towering moai of Easter Island to the grand temples of Angkor, from the great earthworks of Cahokia to the enigmatic tombs of the Etruscans, we have traced stories of human ambition, creativity, and resilience. Each civilization rose to remarkable heights, building structures, developing complex societies, and shaping cultures that endured for generations. Yet, despite their achievements, each eventually succumbed to forces that were often subtle, interconnected, and complex. In this reflection, we consider not only the mystery of their disappearance, but also the lessons that echo across time. One of the most striking themes that emerges is the interplay between human ambition and the environment. Across continents and centuries, civilizations flourished by harnessing the resources available to them: fertile soil, abundant water, navigable rivers, and strategic trade routes. They innovated, adapted, and created technologies that allowed them to thrive. Yet, the same environment that nurtured their growth could also impose limits, sometimes imperceptibly, over decades or centuries. Droughts, deforestation, soil depletion, river shifts, and climate fluctuations exerted pressures that human ingenuity alone could not always overcome. The rise and fall of civilizations reminds us that our achievements, no matter how grand, exist within a larger ecological and natural context, and that harmony with the environment is both fragile and essential. Another lesson is the fragility and resilience of social structures. Civilizations are built upon cooperation, hierarchy, and organization. Complex societies rely on social cohesion, political stability, and coordinated labor to achieve monumental goals, from the construction of Angkor's reservoirs to the precise masonry of Anasazi cliff dwellings. Yet, when these systems face stress through internal conflict, succession disputes, or competition for scarce resources, the consequences can ripple outward, slowly unraveling the foundations of society. In some cases, like the Khmer Empire or Cahokia, this unraveling was gradual, imperceptible in its early stages, and only visible in hindsight. In other cases, like the Anasazi or the Rapa Nui, environmental pressures magnified social tensions, accelerating migration, abandonment, or transformation. These patterns highlight both the resilience and vulnerability inherent in human cooperation. Economic networks and trade connections also emerge as silent actors in the story of collapse. The Etruscans, Mississippians, and Khmer relied on complex systems of exchange, moving goods, ideas, and culture across great distances. Interruptions to these systems, whether due to environmental shifts, political instability, or external competition, could weaken economies, disrupt societies, and accelerate decline. The lesson here is subtle but profound. The stability of human societies often rests on unseen connections, the threads of commerce, communication, and culture that bind people together. When those threads fray, even the most impressive civilizations can falter. Equally important is the way knowledge, culture, and memory persist beyond the physical collapse of a civilization. While cities fall, palaces crumble, and monuments are reclaimed by nature, ideas and practices often survive in new forms. The Romans inherited Etruscan religious rituals, art, and engineering. The descendants of the Anasazi carried agricultural techniques and cultural knowledge into new communities. The legacy of Angkor shaped regional culture long after the jungle reclaimed its streets. Even the undeciphered Rongorongo script of Easter Island, though largely lost, hints at a sophisticated intellectual tradition. Collapse is therefore not total erasure, but transformation, a reconfiguration of human life, memory, and creativity. What vanishes physically may survive symbolically, morally, or intellectually, resonating across time. Perhaps most striking is the emotional resonance of these vanished civilizations. Standing before the silent Moai, the moss-covered pyramids of Angkor, or the earthen mounds of Cahokia, we encounter a quiet melancholy that is also profoundly beautiful. These ruins evoke both loss and continuity, impermanence and endurance. They remind us that history is not a series of discrete events, but a living conversation between past and present, between what is known and what remains mysterious. In their silence, these civilizations invite reflection, contemplation, and a sense of wonder at the human capacity to create, adapt, and leave traces that transcend generations. Finally, contemplating lost civilizations encourages us to consider our own place in the story of human history. We live in a world shaped by the successes and failures of those who came before. Their triumphs inspire us. Their disappearances caution us. The patterns of growth, adaptation, fragility, and decline are not just historical curiosities. They are reminders of the delicate balance that sustains societies.